public comment on issues not on the agenda. Our agenda's really just one item, which has to do with governance. So are there any public comments on anything else? If not, we'll move on to that agenda item. And so what I think we're here to do is, at the last meeting, made a motion that we recommend to council a revised governance structure that I wanted us to say would meet what we view as the requirements that they set in their management plan. They didn't put a governance in, they said a new governance has to meet our approval, and we wanted to take the lead on that, or I thought we should take the lead on that. And so we sort of punted to today so that everyone could spend a little more time on it. The concept we talked about a little, I tried to put it forth before. I can repeat it if anyone forgot it in terms of how the governance would change, but the details we put in the legal language, trying to be complete for the city's benefit. Whether that's going to matter or not is unclear. But today we want to decide if we have anything we'd like to recommend to council tonight. They're having the only council meeting between now and the August 4th vote deadline is tonight. I don't know that they will discuss it tonight. They don't have it on their agenda. We could appear, if we have anything we want to say to them, we could appear and speak in the general public comment. But that's what the meeting is, to decide, do we want to recommend anything to them? And I proposed something. So I'll just put it open for discussion.
I would say generally, I agree we should propose something tonight. And I was planning to be there, but I can't, but I would love to support that. And in general, I agree with what you proposed here.
Yeah, I'm not proposing we amend our bylaws, but just that we say to the city, we think this would be an amendment that should meet your test. We think you need to give concrete feedback about governance in advance of a vote.
I did speak to the two council members also on the phone after a meeting last week. They both said that they agreed with everything. So whether that's a promise or not, I don't know, but at least they appreciate what we're doing here.
Any other discussion?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
I submitted a proposal. I don't know if everybody got a copy of it. Okay.
I did, yeah.
I didn't.
Okay. I didn't bring any copies, so.
What was the gist of it?
Well, if they want me to go over it, I'll go over it. But
Does anyone mind if Ken gives us a summary of his recommendation? Okay, go ahead.
okay, this is just if the senior name can be restructured. This is just some suggestions for that. Okay. Eliminate the corporate class and public member class. Retain only two classes of members. There is no reason to have a corporate or a public class of members. I recommend a new 7-member elected board. 5 seats will be for business members, 2 seats elected for residential members. Retain 3 existing corporate board members for 1 additional year on the board for continuity. Francis still had 1 more year on his term as an elected business member. Members who are elected to serve on the board are elected as individuals who are qualified as property owners or as an employee of a commercial property owner. If a business board member is no longer employed by the Emeryville commercial property owner in good standing, then the seat is vacated and unscheduled vacancies can be replaced by a majority of the board or a special election. TMA board members shall be elected by a weighted vote based on the amount of assessment, the same way that property owners approve assessments. Each board member may designate an alternate to attend the board meeting if they are unable to attend. The alternate must either live or work in Emeryville and must be pre-approved by the board. The term of the alternate will be concurrent with the term of the elected member, and alternate could be approved for more than one board member. Board members should receive a $75 stipend for each board meeting as a matter of respect for the service. It's a small amount, but has been shown to make a difference in other venues. That's it. The idea is to create continuity between the existing board and the new board, so three of the corporate members would be retained for an additional year. So that provides continuity, and I think it's a good compromise.
What were your thoughts on basically eliminating the corporate members?
Well, there's no real distinction between the corporate members and the business members.
I think the distinction is the largest 7.
I know, but between the seventh and the eighth person, there really isn't much distinction. There's no reason to have a corporate control board. It's not democratic. Assigned seats means you don't really know who you're representing if you're not in an election, and it's not a fair process.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest beef that anybody has with the Emeryville is the fact that it is a corporate control board. It doesn't mean that anybody's taking any actions that are improper, but it just is a matter of a process. It's not correct.
You would just be elected to the seat. And if you belong to your corporate, it's not your corporation, it's really the fact that you own the property that gives you the seat on this board if you have a PBA. So therefore, if you have enough votes to get on, then you would be a member that would be on the board because you were elected. And if someone else, you get 3 members and someone else gets 10 members and they outweigh you, then they're on the board. I personally don't think that if we had the thing written correctly, the board is it particularly that important to the way the thing would work, if it's written properly. I also think that, well, I'm not so sure that they put out the vote properly, because your instincts before about them they should have had in this process of the voting, they should have explained to everybody, here's how we think it should operate. And that's primarily what I think the law says they should have done, and they did not do that, which was your fear of voting for it, correct? I'm speaking to you.
Our company has concerns that an important part of the plan, the governance, was punted in the proposed management plan to be determined after a vote. So we have trouble deciding on the vote without that. And I will say, the 2 council people spoke to us at our last meeting. The level of confidence and trust we took from that, or any subsequent conversations, we each get to decide on our own. It's not the level of confidence that I would have preferred. But I'm also, from our company's perspective, not trying to make a point. The service we find valuable, we pay a lot of money into it. We think it's worked well. I've seen it evolve, and this is a new evolution. So the fact that, it's very hard to get anything to be perfect, and perfection is often debated about what that actually is. But I think this group and the system has gotten better every step of the way, and I think this is a positive evolution. I mean, I look at the big picture, and many of these points, Francis, you raised a long time ago. There was a question about a lot of people taking use of the service and not paying in, that the city really wasn't making a contribution other than for the few tiny commercial properties they own. And that even among the commercial businesses, some use more of the service than others, and that it would be a good time to just look at all those issues. And I think the new management plan addresses that. You got a lot more residents paying in. If it goes through, the city pays in. The city will become our biggest contributor. I do take that the feedback from the council people was, we don't need a seat on the board. I don't know that I would object to them having a seat on the board, but I'm certainly not uncomfortable that they don't have a seat on the board. right? As a big payer, they could have said that. They are able to contract with us, but they can't force us to contract with them, right? So, they can't run us. They can just say, you have to enact the management plan the way it's set out, and we need to okay the new governance. That's what I believe are the main decisions they get to make. And for $400 or $500 that doesn't seem bad. That's what they're gonna put in, right?
If that's exactly according to the way the engineering report should be written, and it's exactly written relatively correctly, I don't believe they should make the perfect the enemy of the good, of course. But nonetheless, we can maybe do a little better than perfect without having to destroy anything. This vote should not have been put out. It should have had, according to the law, basically, it should have said to us, this is how we think it should be governed. And then we would, once the board gets put together, then they can agree with whether that's the way it should be done or not, basically, but it would be there, which we did not get. And I think that everything would go a lot smoother if at the very beginnings of the plan have how we're going to increase fees, what we're going to start up with the original numbers, and then if that's set in stone, there isn't too much that anybody can do going along the road which would cause much problems.
Other comments?
No, I just think that, just based on my limited knowledge, but eliminating the corporate members would be a significant departure, would it not, from the way the board has been governed since its inception?
Two things to that. So what?
Okay.
And the reason that got started is it wasn't nefarious. What happened was certain people in town wanted to have help get their people from the bus station to their place. They started to have vans pick them up, et cetera, et cetera. Then it became some guy, people were next to me and said, well, why don't we get together and do this? Then the city staff really said, well, why don't you get everybody in town to come along with your plan? But the corporate structure there, which had been you people paying into it, had been fine, who cares? But since everybody else in town, every other property owner, commercial property at that time, hundreds of them were dragged into the plan, it should have been fixed then, but it was not. It did, and as a matter of fact, I don't think that the corporate people on as they served were trying to harm anybody. I just think that's the way it developed, but we don't need it anymore. And you should be elected. Maybe some of you would get on the board if you want to be.
Yes.
Can I respond to his question? You're not really making any substantial changes because you would be retaining 3 of the existing corporate board members and you would retain Francis, so you'd have 4 of the same board members that you have right now. You don't
Right,
have.
that's a transition. I'm talking about
Yeah.
five years from now.
Well,
Might we end up with a majority of the board that are not majority contributors that are controlling the direction of it? I mean,
Well, I
is that a
guess-
fair question to ask?
I guess
Yeah,
first you
it
need to-
actually is a fair question to ask, but that's just not the way the law is set up. I'm not even sure this whole PBID, do you know how many bus systems, transportation systems there are in PBIDs in the state of California? 1 ours. The reason is because the PBID doesn't substantially add use for that purpose because the public bus system is really a public benefit. There's never a special benefit to either you or to an individual person. It's a public bus system. They're usually set up to, we'll gather $1 million to put lights in. We'll do this and do that. We'll have a bond, we'll make a $5 million bond, and we, the property owners, because we think it benefits us, will pay the bond off over a period of time.
Right.
So the whole thing is rather strange, and we also have another $7 million that are taking out of the city that no one seems to be, which I think this is the city itself wants to seem not to look to try to use that money to make this system work. Because as far as I can see, the staff doesn't want to do it. The city manager says, oh, she doesn't want to do it with running a bus system. Well, she doesn't have to do anything about the bus system. They could just take the money and they can hire it out like as if they were doing garbage. But there's so many people bumping heads, taking positions without thinking about what's the best way to do this for all concerned.
Betsy?
My objection to getting rid of the corporate members, and I've discussed this with Ken a number of times over the last year or two, is that if you were to have, say for example, a small group of property owners who were gathered together and were active, and then you have a lot of other property owners who are not really participating, because that's what's happened in the past couple of years when there have been elections. Very few businesses actually vote. And so what you end up with is, you end up with most of the votes come from the organized. And this happens in the city with Rule. There's a very small group of organized people, and they carry a lot of power because they're the only people who meet regularly. And so that would be my fear, is that it would be, you would end up with a small group of people ultimately controlling the board. And this way, I think people are paying a lot of money into it, and are responsible for a lot of employees, tenants, customers. I think it seems right to me that they would have a seat on the board.
Ken?
In response to that concern, the proposal they made said that board members would be elected by weighted vote, so you wouldn't have the one vote per person anymore, you would have the weighted vote, so what you just described couldn't happen. And in response to Jason, the collective contribution of all the 7 corporate members doesn't even add up to 40% of the money that's collected. So there's a disproportionate representation. The majority of the money collected, there's only 1 seat on the board for. So you have a
So 60% is coming from smaller.
60% coming from.
Even more. And it would be even dispersed more, because now we have homeowners.
Right.
But like I said, I've seen how, I don't think people always sit around trying to screw their neighbor. The way it ran for the 2 years I saw it, everybody was pretty, tried to be pretty fair. Best they knew how to be fair in relation to what they were doing. Most people didn't have any idea about the P-bid. They had no idea about the other possible sources of money to use for a bus system.
And we can't qualify for those other sources because of our structure?
No, I mean, it's complicated, but.
That's complicated.
But I will say that the new management plan specifically says that the council will have the ability to act to change the TMA if there's a whole bunch of outside sources. I mean, the management plan contemplates the opportunity for outside money to supplement or in large part replace our money. Now, that doesn't mean that the city will work to get that money, Francis. I got that, okay?
That's the problem.
But
When
so
the money is available.
But here's how I feel about it. A couple things. One, all of a sudden, they're the biggest payer. So their incentive is much increased. It is, if you think that money is really almost the primary motivator, the fact that they haven't had to invest much probably didn't put at the top of the list the goal to get other money. So that's number one. Number two, this whole process has focused a lot of attention on it, and a lot of people who live in Emeryville and vote will now be thinking about the Emery go-round more often, more granularly, not just it's a bus I can get on, right? So I think there'll be more pressure on council, because those people could argue the same thing you're saying, which is
Right.
city council, if you can bring money in, you could reduce our levy. So I feel that there's going to be a lot of pressure there. It doesn't mean it'll happen automatically, but this group, the future governing group, can also actively try to make that happen at city. There's a lot of the council that's new. It looks like there'll be even more council that's new. They're gonna have a new city manager. They have a temporary city manager. There's been lots of changes. Huh?
There is a new city manager.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
She's permanent.
Carolyn Mayer. She was hired she was a Rancho Paolo.
But I thought she
Mayor.
was interim.
No, she's.
Oh, that's the
she's
real,
city
okay,
manager.
okay,
She's
well, so there's a new
permanent.
city manager.
Yeah.
That's good to know, so that actually if you educated her, she's not gonna leave.
Right.
Well, she could leave, but I mean, that isn't the plan.
Right, yeah.
Right?
She's moved here from
So,
Rancho Paolo.
those are things our company takes a lot of stock in. I appreciate that you say it doesn't look like people are managing the system to try to get unfair benefit, because I've never seen that. I think the new management plan makes it almost impossible to do that. So I'm just interested in having a board that brings some business experience, that brings a stake in it, and money creates a stake. You know, our respective companies are investing a lot, so they are allocating people to come here. It's important to us, so come to meetings, because not everyone comes to meetings. We've had trouble with that. It's run well. We've made, I think, good decisions about who's really running the day-to-day. So I feel like it's got so many pluses. The concept of trying to have a general election, I mean, the US has a Senate, which isn't specifically by vote. States have different weightings. So having it all exactly weighted, I'm not sure provides better governance. But more importantly, it almost creates a system to have a whole big race for seats that aren't that special. That I don't know why we would create a system of having elections and competitions, because I worry that changes the tenor of the thing. Like, there's benefits to individuals to be on it. I don't see that. I don't think we get any benefits, right? We get a free lunch, which is the first time, I think, in a couple of years that I've had a pastry or two. So that's how we feel about it.
Okay, I have a slightly different feel about it. I don't think the city pays a dime into it. The city paid my dime into it that they get from me. The city never pays any money except for tax money that they get from other people, which is i.e. essentially us. Businesses pay about 90% of all the taxes in this town, is that correct?
I don't know the number, it's a high percentage.
It's up there.
That's 78%.
It's a high percentage.
So they don't pay it themselves. And they, essentially, the board is quite happy with us, I don't care where you stand, on paying for this system, because they never want to, they say to the voters that they're getting it for free because we're paying for it. So thus, they were just forced this time in to put people on it because I think I insisted upon it. I think I did. I said, you can't do this without having the people pay in that they're using it, pay something into it. So we came to where we had this new election, etc. And it's still, I still will fight the idea that you can have a 5% a year increase. And I also, I have a problem with the management saying that we were running it from 2.7 million last year, and all of a sudden the next year it's going to be 4 million. That's a starting point. But that's other issues. Right now, I think it's not a bad idea. And some of the corporate members would be on it, and I agree with you. If it's set up right, there's nothing much to do. I just don't think, it's not that there's nothing here, there's nothing worth me embezzling for. I can't make 100 million here and run off with it. If I could, I might try it, but it can't be done. I think we should just stick to the law and do it in that fashion, and then let that take care of everything. And they never pay attention to the law in the city. They can hardly care, the bureaucrats. It's pretty much the law that they should have told us when they were doing a vote that says this is how we're going to manage it. So we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. We could have voted pro or con on it right now.
Well, so let me pose a question to you, Francis. I mean, in a perfect world from my company's standpoint, there would be a governance in place before we vote. And so my whole goal at the last meeting was, we didn't think we had to take the lead. We thought the city was going to take the lead. We've learned they won't. So should we take the lead and say, you wanted governance out in the future, can't we try to flesh it out before then? And my goal was to ask them that question tonight, right? And that's all I'm really recommending, that we ask them, will you make a decision about governance before the vote? Recommend that they do that, that's
important. But the voting's already taking place. I've already voted.
Okay, Francis, I haven't. So, I mean, this is,
But Jeff, isn't that a reasonable question? I mean, is the talk of inserting governance, isn't it too late for that? I mean, is it not? So, the way I understand, we have Mike Connor as our lawyer, and he can answer things in more detail. But the management plan says, basically that the county collects taxes, gives them to the city.
as part of that tax bill, the PBID dues, whatever they are paid, and they have the money, and then they contract with us, the TMA, to run the system. So the management plan says, as part of that contract, we want to know the TMA, the person with whom we're contracting, has a governance that we're comfortable with. And then they talk about that should have some, fair and reasonable representation of people, but it's very general. So what I was proposing here is just to say, we want you to take a position on what's a reasonable governance before, because some people may not matter for their vote. I mean, Francis, I presume you made your decision regardless. If they said you would run the thing, you still voted what you voted,
I
right?
certainly would not do it. That wasn't my only reason.
No, I understand,
One
but
of
so,
them,
but,
the
but
plan
for
should
those
have
of
been
us
here by
that
law.
care about that, so this whole, a majority of this board said we're very uncomfortable that that wasn't discussed in advance of the vote. So I was recommending to us to challenge the council to say something about governance. I don't know that they will, but that's what I'm asking. Do we wish to do that tonight? That's what I'm asking.
But the question is, that came up shortly from what you were saying just the other day, and I never saw what you had said till just the day before yesterday.
Well, that's only because, Francis, that's how fast it's evolving, right? I mean,
That may all be true.
we were at the board meeting together where Karen Hemphill said, we're gonna form a task force,
Oh,
which
I
you're
know that.
on,
Yeah.
Betsy's
Right.
on, and then they're gonna make recommendations to council, and council will talk about them publicly tonight.
Yeah.
And then that didn't
Well,
happen.
It's just a reaction to that, not
Yeah.
being put in place.
Yeah.
That's what
And
it
then
is.
I've been told by Scott Donahue that they can't talk about it tonight because it will,
It's not on the agenda.
no, because it will appear to influence the
Oh.
people pro or against vote.
They're already voting. It's-
So all they can do is listen.
All the horses are out of the barn, we're gonna go out and shoot the ones we don't like. I mean, it's crazy. It isn't even the horses, it's crazy. The vote's already going, I voted, most everybody I know has voted, one way or the other. I agree with you about, we should try to say how we want it governed. I'm not even sure the whole bid is even legal. But
And that's we
regardless of
can't
that-
make
Yeah, we
legal
can't do that.
determinations.
I didn't say we were
here.
gonna do that today, I'm saying
No, I
there's so
know.
many problems with it. I personally will let the P-bid go by, even if I don't think it's legal, if it is fair and run rationally, and we pay their fair share. I'll let it slide.
Well, do you think that the new plan reasonably is fair in terms of who's paying?
No, I don't myself. Now, that doesn't mean that because I don't think it's fair that other people couldn't have a different idea that I wouldn't listen to, but I don't think it's fair. I think that even the people who, as a consequence of doing a building project, had to pay into it. I think if we do a new P-bid and we all put you into it, I think all you guys should be let off the whole period. You shouldn't have to do it. It should be all done through the P-bid. And I don't know who it is here that was doing any building. Maybe you guys get caught in that, correct? Some
I'm
of your,
not sure.
well, when you go for a new project, you're gonna build it 20
Oh,
feet
that some
high.
projects have conditions of
Yes,
approval.
you have to put money in here. You should all be taken off that list, period. That's just not fair. That's not fair. Even if you're big, you shouldn't be treated unfairly. But tonight, go, by all means, if they'll let you talk about it, and I don't know whether, you're saying that the city council is fearful of even talking about it because they feel it would.
They're not allowed to. They can listen, but they can't,
Yeah, I can
they
see that.
can't
That's like a
discuss.
Brown Act.
Well, so what they're able to do or not, I just want to challenge, my recommendation was to challenge them to take a stand. I don't know if they will or not, but giving them the opportunity then tells me, what
Well,
I think.
I think you people can talk to them, and they don't have to respond to you, but they can hear it, and thus they're not gonna do anything that's gonna violate the Brown Act. and
But I think it would be good for the TMA board to have a recommendation that they all agree on. I think that will go far with the council, if everyone can agree in this room.
I guess I
what
don't
that is.
understand who's going to make the governance decision.
Well, so let's assume the PBID passes.
Mhm.
Because if it doesn't, we have our existing PBID and set of directors for another year. But, so let's assume it goes forth. The city's gonna collect the money based on the new division of pay-ins, set forth in the management plan. And the management plan says they will contract with the TMA to give us that money to run the system, but as part of that contract, they need to okay a governance plan that's fair and reasonable effectively, right? So they didn't say what they think that was. And my concern for my company was they could say fair and reasonable is Jeff Sears runs the whole thing, doesn't talk to anyone else.
And pays for it.
Well, no, they can't say that, right? But, because the payment is all set in the management plan, so they can't fiddle with that. They can't decide what the increases are. What they can decide is what they aren't, meaning the set of directors in a new governance can recommend 0 to 5, can't be more, can't be accrued from prior years. They could say, we don't agree with you, but they can't tell us what it is, right?
So you're saying that the city approves the governance plans, but there's no mandate to say that task force that we talked about before must convene, it must be representative of
No.
the payers, it must, so they.
They can't force it on us. What they can tell us is, until you change, we won't contract with you. We can say, this is the only way we'll change.
So basically, we're responsible as the existing board for proposing the governance plan.
We're not responsible for it. Well, I mean,
It's
well,
your corporation, so
Right.
you govern this corporation. The city's saying, we're not gonna give the money to the corporation unless we like the way it's governed. But it's ultimately the corporation that decides
That's what
how
I'm
it's
saying.
governed.
Yes.
The
Right.
So it's
directors and the
ultimately-
members.
It's us to make the proposal and the city to approve it.
yeah, they can.
What's them to say we are existing after this new vote?
We're just, for the point of argument, we're assuming we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a corporation that goes on. It's not gonna go poof. It's,
Right.
you know, it may not have anything to do, but,
Right.
and you may decide to dissolve it, but this corporation is independent, and the law, a couple
Right,
references
that's
to the
great.
law. The PBID law simply says if the city chooses to, it can contract with quote-unquote an owners association, which may be an existing nonprofit or a newly created nonprofit, to provide the services of the PBID. That's about all it says. There's
That's
no
correct.
details, there's no restrictions, it's very general.
Mhm.
And so that's what's happened since the first PBID was put in place. That's what would continue now, is simply the city says, okay, you know, and I got involved the first time they put in the PBID because they needed someone to negotiate the arrangement to get the money from the city. We came up with the first agreement to provide the money from the city to the TMA. That agreement's gone on and on. I'm not sure I've been involved in that further. You'll need a new one, and the new one is what this management plan says. It has to have a fair governance structure. So I think what you're discussing here is, if we make a proposal to the city saying, hey, here's what we think is a fair governing structure, what do you guys think about that? Maybe they won't respond. They could call a special council meeting and discuss it. Maybe they don't feel comfortable doing that with the vote still in progress. But that's sort of where you are. But even if it passes, you're still gonna have this to go through. And I think, Jeff, what you're saying is, I think some of the people who may have to vote on this, who haven't voted yet, you know, are a little concerned that there may be a breakdown, and that the city, and there's some other reasons that may cause it. The city, if the city and the TMA can't come to agreement, then that sort of leaves a stalemate. That's a potential problem. Should have been thought through ahead of time, but you know, potentially reasonable people, it gets worked out, and you come up with a plan. You're trying to start that process. Not early, it should have been started before,
Yeah.
but you're trying to
Trying
move
to
that
catch
process
up.
along,
Yeah.
so there's a little more understanding.
Right.
If this is out there and people see it and there's not a huge reaction, maybe people who are voting will feel comfortable voting yes, because they feel like there's maybe tacit approval, I don't know.
Well, the
But
property
we're doing
owner
what you can.
association is us. Even if it passes now, and if it were to pass now, and we can agree that we can put something together to keep this thing going that is fair, rational, etc. We can present it to them. They say they don't like it. They say, who in God's name are you gonna deal with? Because we are the people who pay it. And on this particular, I mean, with the people I know and the people in this room, we have the majority vote already in terms of the weight of the money. So maybe we're not, if we do it right, we don't have to worry about it so much now. We just wait and see what happens with this bid. I would prefer that it go down, because this thing was pushed through essentially by the staff, as opposed to giving it a lot of thought by the city council, because the city council really would just as soon have to pay it. as opposed to have anybody else have to pay, but they got stuck where they had to bring them along because of the P-bid saying that whoever benefits at, in some way, shape, or form, which was the citizens, the homeowners, maybe when it's done, we just say, we're here, we make up a thing, we change our things, our laws, and we say, we'll make it fair. There wouldn't be a corporate member, but there would probably be corporate members. The member is, you're not a corporate member, you're a member because your corporation owns property. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on there. But you would certainly probably be on there some because, Christ, you just vote off for yourself and you might win one seat. Because the other votes would be dispersed.
So you're recommending that the elected governance structure, the business members, all 5 elected, or
Are
what is
you
your
recommending
Oh, no,
recommendation?
I think 7 members is better than 10. I think it's less, it's about the same thing. It's not as unwieldy. If it's set up right, we just don't have that much power. The only thing I would see is, I would change that 5% reward so you can't do it, and I would say at a certain point, if there's something that happens that we need to gather another 300,000 that year, then we can have something that we get 6 out of 7 members or 5 out of 7 members say we will look for another couple $100,000 this year because we have a problem, we can vote on it and do it. That's about it. Then most of the time, you run the system. You guys do it. You hardly need us. Do you really need us? No.
Need your votes.
Jeff? I would just say on the size of the board, I don't think 11 is unwieldy. I've been on 24-person boards, that's unwieldy. I think that a 7-member board might be seen as elite a little bit by the folks that are paying in a little bit, and it's limited to 7 people, especially if we're reducing the size of our board going forward with a much bigger budget. I think you need to take in some PR concerns there when thinking about that. And I don't agree with the $75 stipend. I think that if you can't be a volunteer to be on the board, then you should bother being on the board.
Yep, I agree.
But you see, we have 11 now.
10.
So 10, but the 10 is still with 2. The people we gotta most watch out for in a sense, is the homeowners.
Yeah, they're gonna honk.
No, but there's still 2, and on the board they have more power because they're 2 of 7 as opposed to 2 of 10. So I don't see where there's going to be a squawk there.
Well, I'm struggling to hear where the benefits are with what you're recommending. Like, why make, this has been successful and it's worked the way it's structured. And we're talking about not immaterial evolution, but it's not sort of radical. And I worry that the more changes put risk to the
So
system.
what you're trying to say, you yourself, your company wants to have your designated seat like royalty in the next round.
No, because it's always subject to how much people pay in. That's changing totally in this.
No, you're paying, there's gonna be a lot of changes now. The changes should be, if I and Andy Gates, okay, we have a lot of property together, might equal yours, let's say. If we wanna have us represented, us 2, we're the same as you, just let it fall out, and it's still not gonna make a difference to you, Jeff.
Well, interestingly enough, I think that my proposed structure would allow you and Andy both to sit. I can't have more than 1 seat. You actually can.
But you not without the way you have the voting. You already have most of the seats taken up according to the way you have it set up now with the corporate membership. You have them there. They're in
Well, I don't know when you
perpetuity.
say you.
It's starting to sound personal.
I'm not sure we all are a cabal that work together. I mean, we're all representing our different interests. Many of these people are not the same people that were here a year and 2 years ago.
They just represent their companies. And I don't know how much, and every company here doesn't necessarily have the same interest that you and I have in our property. We do this for our business. Disney, who owns Pixar, this isn't a big deal to them.
Well, I think it is a big deal in that they prioritize somebody to
I
come
didn't say
and
I'm
engage.
saying that the amount of money doesn't come from a basis of what you don't rent your property out and make money on. Are you both Pixar?
No, I'm artist.
Novartis makes their money selling drugs.
But that's not what we're talking about. It's in terms of our employees though, it's.
No, wait, yeah, so, fine. Then you can get on the board. You still have to wait because you own the property.
it seems like in the 2 years I've been here, we've made good changes, and I've seen this service improve. I've seen a new contract, I've seen a lot of route improvements, and never has it been, central to any of these big companies. It's been, how do we best serve the whole community? And I just sort of feel like if it's not broken, why try to shake it all up again?
I just have one comment to make
I
about
don't
the
think so.
structure. Historically, we've had a hard time getting board seats filled.
Yes, I know.
Business member was very hard to get until we finally had one competition when you and Andrew Allen both went after the position. Before that, the TMA had to beg people to serve in this position. And we also have a hard time getting corporate members sometimes to be interested. So my concern would be having an election for all the positions might deter people that otherwise would serve into this competition of trying to serve on the board. And maybe further having a hard time getting seats filled. That would be my only concern based on our experience in the
Well,
past.
let me suggest that, if it's, you want a system that's fair. And if you don't have elected board members, it's not perceived to be fair. It doesn't mean you're doing things wrong, but it's not fair. Having assigned seats isn't fair. Now, we've raised questions about the assessment over the past couple of years, and nothing's been done about it. Right? People using the system that aren't paying for it, nothing's done about it. I mean, there's an ongoing injustice. There's lots of people that aren't paying, but the assessments are never adjusted. So somebody should be responsible for that. But getting back to the sales tax measure, for the last 15 years, we had a half-cent sales tax, and the city never got a penny for the Emery ground. Well, I discovered that the transportation expenditure plan didn't allow for the Emery ground to be funded. So before Measure BB was finalized, I went down there with Stewart, and we threatened them with a competing ballot measure. They adjusted the expenditure plan and put a $300 million pot of money to fund shuttles. They didn't say it's definitely for the Emery ground, but there is some commitments there to fund the Emery ground. But the question is, if this is a private service, that's one thing, and if it's public service, it's another thing. So if this PBID is approved and it gets challenged in court, a judge might say, well, this is really a public service. I mean, BART collects $30,000 a day at least in cash fares. That's a huge public benefit. The Emery ground takes cars off the road. That's another benefit. And the conditions of approval for people to contribute, they weren't contributing to provide a special benefit to other people. They were contributing to provide a general public benefit of mitigating traffic. There's so much evidence here that suggests this is a public system. So if the court throw it out, then you'd have to have a different form of financing, because a PBID is not possible if it's a public system.
Okay, I'm going to try to, Betsy.
Okay.
As probably getting back to the governance thing, and getting into the 11 or 7 aspect of it, the language that the city put into the engineer's management report about governance said that the city is going to work with the members to come up with an equitable board that has large businesses, small businesses, people from different parts of the city, residents, different types of businesses, retail. It listed a number of different things, large and small, in different parts of the city, and I think that that's more apt to happen with 11 than with 7.
So let me try to narrow the field of discussion. I appreciate we're trying to be inclusive, but a lot of discussion about whether the PBID should be voted yes or no isn't the subject of today. We all get to make our choices.
Right.
Francis, you've spoken a lot about that, and maybe some people have been swayed from thinking it opposite. Maybe they were swayed a long time ago. Ken has said the same things. That's sort of a, how do you make your own individual vote? And we're all free to call each other up and call anyone who's going to vote and try to influence them. But I'd like to get back to what I'm proposing, which is really the scheme of, if it gets voted no, nothing I'm talking about here matters.
Then we're
So,
having a different discussion.
right, so let me finish. So I really want to get back to, I'm asking the assembled board here if it's their pleasure that I take a proposed revised governance plan to the meeting tonight and say a majority of the board would be satisfied with this, and we believe it meets the test that's been put forward in the management plan, and we'd like the council to speak positively for that, give us feedback before the vote, if you think this meets the test that's established in the management plan or not. That's what I'm asking you to decide. If you decided yes, we'd go ask. We can't force them to give us an answer, right? But I think it's worth asking. And I really think we should focus on that outside of, can we get money from somewhere else to run it? Because that's all possible, but that's all about how do you vote, just big picture. And I will say, well, I'd like to amend this in one way. I appreciate Betsy has pointed it out, and I'm not sure this was intended, but the way this is drafted, it says other directors have seats for 3 years, but it proposes the residential seats for 1 year. And I think that was because we figured the council's picking them in this proposal, and they may want to rotate them. But Betsy's pointed out, and this is true, I know it, that the council has got a lot of different groups to which it appoints representatives. The economic development group, the health, child care, arts, and those seats are generally for 2 or 3 years. So I think I'd like to amend this just to make the residential seats 3 years so that it's consistent. The intent was not to make them any different. But that's what I'm proposing, is you all vote whether we should take this to them. We're not amending it, so we're not voting on that change. It's really, I'm asking you to vote to have me call the question tonight and see if they'll answer.
I would vote that you can call, but I don't think we should put your recommendations that you said the other night into the bloodstream at this particular point in time. Everything that he has just said, if the P-bid is passed today, and we wanted to keep this board going, and we wanted to change everything so it fit everybody what they thought was fair, then I think in essence we have the power to do that, not even the city. I think that's what we could do.
I think if you're going to go to the council meeting tonight, it's going to be just to say this is our thinking on the matter at this time. I don't think you'll get a comment or dialogue from them based on what I'm hearing. The only question I would have on what you're proposing does everybody agree that structure of the 11 positions is right and equitably distributed? That's, we are responsible under what I'm hearing under the corporate structure of proposing the governance plan. And what I'm also hearing is the city is not in a position right now to weigh in, so it will by de facto be after the P-bid is voted for or against.
Which is another problem with the whole bid.
Well, which is not what we expected when we went into this. We thought
And that's,
there were,
and look, Francis, we may change our vote. We may be forced to vote no if they can't or won't speak tonight.
I think you should vote no, and I think we should take. We were talking to the engineer, and the engineer said he was willing to talk to a bunch of people about putting his engineering report together. So when they were doing that, we could have some input. He never did that. He went right to the city. The city gave him all his marching orders and exactly what he followed, and I think what he has done there is unfair. I think this 5% a year increase you could do should not exist. I think the fact that he started with a $4 million a year budget, when we right now operating on 2.8, what was the budget this year?
Over 3 million.
And that was
Just over 3 million.
with the new buses and that?
The 3 new, yeah.
Oh, you're
but not
buying
quite
new
a-
buses?
Oh, yes, yeah, lots of buses.
And anyway, the way the budget was set up, he has like the 4 million as the start point, and you keep on going. If you look at this thing arithmetically, it ends up that sometime we have a reserve that's bigger than what we spend. All those things should have been brought to us so we could have made some business ideas of how to do this. So if you happen to do X, things can change. And we never had that chance. I think that you should vote no on this. And I think in the end, if we really want to make it fair, we can do it amongst ourselves, because who else are they going to give it to? Because we are the owners. They can't say we're going to give it to this group over here. And somebody says, well, I have 4 owners and we own, all together we own $1 million worth of property. Well, in this room, we sit here with $300 million worth of property.
Well, Francis, the reason I am bringing this is because we are anxious about leaving it uncertain for the future, right? I mean, we are not confident about how we should vote with this totally unspoken about. So that's why I brought it to you. You all may feel differently, that's what I'm asking, that's what I'm asking you.
No, I think it's, sorry, no, I think if you don't go and say, I think it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, it's the one chance, we made promises beforehand, they didn't come through, so this is the one chance you have to actually say something, so.
And it's ultimately, if it's our responsibility, then you're doing exactly the right thing by going and saying, this is the intention of the board. The city may or may not comment on it, but this is where we're heading with it, if we as a team agree or not. I think that's what we're here to really discuss, to your point, is whether we agree with what is being brought to the city council as a piece of information.
Who's read through this whole thing? Line by line, item by item.
Read or comprehend?
No, don't embarrass
Just
me.
one comment, you're not approving you're not changing the bylaws today.
No.
You're
No,
simply
no,
saying,
this is-
this structure
This
as
was a
reflected
representative
here.
of how it might look.
We wanna go through it and.
I don't agree this is the way it should look in the end. I still think that you shouldn't give them this in the bloodstream. I think you could say it, whoever's with you, you can say you were very nervous, you felt that they should have had in the first plan, they should have had an idea of how this thing was gonna be governed, whether it was gonna be a new one, us, however they were gonna do it, and they didn't do that, correct? They didn't do that, they said they would.
Michael, is there any way that you could provide feedback on why they wouldn't and what would be the issue of them specifically defining governance in a PVID management plan, the city? Is there any issues with that?
Why they wouldn't?
Yeah, why not having it specifically listed in there?
It doesn't need to be.
Right.
I mean, I think they decided that they wanted it, and maybe partly from hearing what they hear from the community. I mean, certainly that was, but, you know, this engineer went down this particular path, I assume with some direction from the city. Didn't have to, but that is what we have. That's why there's a concern about voting
Betsy?
for that language.
They initially had said, after they got some feedback that some businesses were gonna vote against it because there wasn't a governance plan. That's when they decided to put together, to reconvene the task force. And then after it was canceled, I thought that it must have been canceled, or it was postponed, but then it was never rescheduled. And I thought that must have been because the city council had made the determination for whatever reason that they didn't want to do it right now. But I talked to at least 3 different city council members and actually a relative of another city council member, and the feedback I've gotten since then has been that nobody understands why that didn't actually happen. The meeting, there was going to be either 1 or 2 meetings before the July 21st meeting, which is the meeting tonight. They were going to, it would have been a staff level meeting, which is what the previous meetings had been, and they would have brought the recommendation from the meeting to the city council, and the city council would have made some determination. And so my impression was that the city council must have said, no, we decided we don't want to do that, but the city council members that I've actually talked to about it said they don't understand why that didn't happen. So I don't think that was something, or it's my impression from conversations that was not something that was a conscious decision, no, we're not going to do it. It was just something that just happened that way. It should have happened differently.
Ken?
Yeah, I think it makes sense not to do anything until you see whether the PVID is approved or not. If the PVID is approved, then you can come back here and decide what you want to do. If you load them with that beforehand, then on August 4th, they'll just adopt your plan, and then it still won't be fair, and then we'll either have to challenge it or not. And it has to be challenged in the first 90 days. So I don't think you're on firm ground if it's challenged and determined to be a public
Ken, we're
service.
not talking about legal issues, and we can't
I'm
spend
just
any more
suggesting why
time.
you should wait with your vote, that's all.
We can't talk about the legality. No one here is a lawyer but Mike, and he's not opining on it. We're just trying to, my proposal is, again, to recommend this as being reflective of the current thinking of a majority of the board at tonight's council meeting, and implore them to comment on it publicly and see if they will, and they may not, right? You know?
Well, where's the opportunity for other
Ken,
input? The board members are basically deciding they want to keep their own seats. I mean, that's you know, is that fair? I mean, really?
Well, who else would decide
It's
that?
the corporate structure, the corporation is set up right now in such a way that it's set up, we can't change that immediately.
No, but the whole idea is if
We
you
can
want...
look at it over time.
The public support for a corporate board is not there. People do not think corporate should have assigned seats on a board.
So it's not there, so
So if I understand the objective is for the city to, again, to go back to what we discussed in the last meeting, continuity is their biggest concern, if I understand them correctly. So the PBID is out there as a way for immediate continuity. If it needs to change later, that's certainly a topic for discussion. But if we're the structure that has to make that recommendation, and the city's concern also, or the residents' concern, have been insufficient representation in that process, then I see what you're proposing as in the right direction, and the message to the city council tonight being, we've heard the city, we've heard the residents, we've heard the concerns. We are thinking along these lines. When the PBID is either decided for or against, we will come back to you with a formal recommendation that you as a city council can discuss. I mean, that's what I'm hearing here. I have Scott's email pulled up if you want to. Would it help for me to read that to people?
Scott?
I don't know.
Donahue, yeah, I know he is.
Yeah, I mean, would it help for people to hear that?
yeah, I think so.
Okay. He said, I asked our city manager to put this item on our agenda as an information item so that we could talk about it. Our city attorney said this is a bad idea because if the PBID passes, the council will have been seen to be unduly influencing the vote, and therefore the vote could be challenged in court. So the council will just be hearing about it but not deliberating. If the PBID fails the next round, round is likely to look almost identical to this round because it will be engineered. I don't know what that means. So, anyway, that's why the city council can't talk about it, but they could hear you, and we could be, from a PR standpoint, seen as being sensitive to the community's concerns. So I'm in favor of it. My question is only, is it sufficient residential representation if they wanted to go higher? That's maybe a subject of discussion if PBID passed or not.
We'll just note the two residential members would put them 2 of 11. The residential funding is what, about 20%, so that's.
So
that's
as
about
long as
pretty
it's
close.
whatever is considered equitable by all the stakeholders, whether it's higher or lower is fine, so long as it's equitable. But I do support what you're asking, which is going and informing the city council of the intention.
So is that a motion? I guess we should move and ask for a vote.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of that happening tonight, me taking that to the council? Aye. Opposed? No. Got it.
I don't see, I just want to add a couple, I don't see the damage it will do, but I don't see that you're going to accomplish anything either.
Yeah, I agree, but I'd like to understand what you think the damage would be of doing that this evening. What's driving the no vote?
What's driving your yes vote? This thing.
What's driving my yes vote is the understanding of the current construct of the corporation, its charter, its bylaws, and what the city is expecting from us.
The city doesn't expect anything from us at this point. We're introducing it tonight. The city has been letting it, they either totally ignored it or let it lag. One or the other is, the only thing's true. And
I mean, under our current agreement with them.
I'm saying that this is what the city has done so far with this new PBID. They didn't even think necessarily that there would be, that this group would necessarily be the ones that were going to run the PBID. That's why I think they haven't said anything to us. If they're going to set this, they're going to have this PBID and it gets passed, then somebody has to run it, and the somebody that has to run it is going to have to be people who pay into it. That is going to be us, no matter who we are. You are going to be part of the us. And I think that at the end, we can make the whole thing work on our own. And if they say they don't like it, what are they going to say? What are they going to say? They're going to give it to someone else. Who is they going to give it to? Another group of who? Who's the other group? It doesn't exist. It's us. According to, if you take this thing through logically from beginning to end, we sit here and amongst ourselves, we could do it properly and make it fair, and they couldn't do a damn thing about it. They just can't.
Well, Francis, I see that as an equally strong argument for leaving the way it works in place. So I'm not, you've said what you what you think, and everyone gets to make their own choices with their votes, whether they voted already or not, but.
That's right.
So I will do that. We'll report back if anything is said. I think there's a high chance nothing will be said.
No, but if I can add too, there is a PR factor here. And the 5 folks that he's going to be standing in front of are extremely political people. And the fact that the chamber is being taken off of the board will just spread smiles. A flower will bloom in the chambers tonight. So, I mean, it's a strong move. It says, look, they will. I mean, so I think in that regard, that I think it's a good thing to do. It shows that we're thinking in front of it. We're thinking we know the residents are coming into the fold. We're taking away that chamber seat who's not even a true stakeholder. I think nothing but good can come of it. I just don't think anything constructive is going to come of it.
All right. I guess we've concluded our business. Thank you for coming.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you.